Ever get an anonymous email that makes you question everything you thought you knew about your marriage? Yeah, me neither. Until last Thursday. The subject line was simple. You deserve to know. No name, no explanation. Just 6 photos of my husband Forrest walking into an apartment building downtown. Different days, different times. Same guilty posture. Shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into his own jacket. I'm Opal Mercer, 38, and I've spent the last 12 years married to a man who claimed his biggest secret was that he actually enjoyed my mother's fruitcake at Christmas. Turns out, he had bigger secrets. Way bigger. I printed the photos, all 6. High-quality, 8x10 glossy prints that cost me $32 at the FedEx office on Merriman Avenue. If I was going to confront my husband about his apparent side piece, I was going to do it with production value. I arranged them on our dining room table in a perfect grid, 2 rows of 3, like a gallery exhibition titled Forrest's Thursday Night Adventures. I even added a little placard I made with my label maker. Mixed Media Series, Deception, 2024. When Forrest walked through the door that evening at 8:47 p.m., late as usual from his networking happy hour with the HR team, he saw the display and literally stumbled. His briefcase hit the hardwood floor with a thud that probably woke our neighbor's cat 3 houses down. Opal! His voice came out strangled, like someone had their hands around his throat. What? Who sent you those? I was sitting in the living room, perfectly positioned so I could see his face in the dining room mirror. I'd been waiting for 2 hours, nursing the same glass of Pinot Grigio, watching it get warm and undrinkable. Worth it. Does it matter? I kept my voice steady, conversational, like we were discussing what to order for takeout. I'm more interested in who lives in that apartment, the one at 847 Lexington Avenue, Unit 3B. I watched the color drain from his face. Actual drain, like someone pulled a plug. He went from his normal ruddy complexion to the color of our cream-colored walls in about 3 seconds flat. It's not... I can explain. He moved toward the table, hands shaking as he picked up one of the photos. The one from October 17th. I'd written the date on the back. This isn't what it looks like. Really? I stood up, set down my wine glass with deliberate care on the coaster, because even in the middle of discovering your husband's betrayal, you don't leave water rings on good furniture. Because it looks like you've been visiting someone, regularly, on Thursday nights. Which is interesting, because Thursday nights are when you supposedly have your standing HR department happy hours at Burke Street Pub. I'd called Burke Street Pub last week. They don't do happy hour on Thursdays. They're closed on Thursdays. Have been for 6 months, ever since they started renovating their kitchen. Forrest's jaw worked, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish that had just realized the hook wasn't catch and release. I called your coworker Marcus, I continued, walking into the dining room now, standing on the opposite side of the table. The photos between us like evidence in a murder trial, which, in a way, they were. Murder of a marriage. Lovely guy. We had a great chat about college football. He was very confused when I mentioned the Thursday happy hours. Said the team usually does Tuesday lunch meetings at Panera. Opal, please. I also checked our bank statements. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app I'd been obsessively refreshing for 3 days. You've been withdrawing $200 cash every Thursday for the past 6 months. ATM on Lexington Avenue, right across from that apartment building. His face went from cream-colored walls to ash-gray ceiling. New paint job. Same guilty canvas. Who is she? My voice cracked just slightly on the she. I hated that. Hated giving him the satisfaction of knowing he'd hurt me. But 12 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate because your husband turns out to be a lying, cheating. It's not what you think. He set the photo down, both hands gripping the edge of our dining table. The table we'd picked out together at that estate sale in Biltmore Village. The table where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinner for his parents just 2 weeks ago. I'm not having an affair. I actually laughed. Genuine, slightly unhinged laughter that echoed in our vaulted ceiling. Oh, this should be good. Please, enlighten me. What exactly are you doing in that apartment every Thursday night if you're not screwing someone? He was quiet for so long I thought he might actually pass out. His knuckles were white against the dark wood of the table. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the fact that our house was a comfortable 68 degrees. "I'm attending a grief support group," he finally whispered. I blinked. Once. Twice. Processed the words. A what? A support group. For people who've lost their spouses. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It meets in Sylvie Patterson's apartment. She's a widow. She lost her husband 8 months ago in a car accident. She started the group to help others going through the same thing." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I could feel my brain trying to compute what he was saying, trying to make it make sense with the evidence in front of me. "You're attending a support group," I repeated slowly, "for widows and widowers." "Yes." "A support group for people whose spouses have died." "Yes." I looked at him. Really looked at him. At his guilty, sweating, panicking face. At his trembling hands. At the way he still couldn't meet my eyes. And then I looked down at myself. At my very much alive body. At my hands, which had just finished surgery on a German Shepherd with a torn ACL 3 hours ago. At my scrubs, which still had a small bloodstain on the knee from where I'd knelt to comfort the dog's anxious owner. "Forrest," I said slowly, carefully, like I was talking to a spooked horse. "I'm not dead." "I know." "Then why—" I stopped. Realization hit me like a tranquilizer dart, sudden and disorienting. "Oh my God, you told them I was dead." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "You told them I was dead," I repeated, louder now. "You've been going to a grief support group and telling people that I, your very much alive wife, am dead." "Opal, how?" The word came out sharp, surgical. "How did I die, Forrest? What's my cause of death in your little fantasy? Car accident? Cancer? Did I slip in the shower? Trip over one of the dogs at the clinic? Please let me explain." "Oh, I want you to explain." I grabbed one of the dining chairs, pulled it out, sat down, crossed my legs, folded my hands in my lap like I was at a parent-teacher conference. "I want you to explain exactly how you've been mourning your dead wife while she's been home performing emergency surgeries and wondering why her husband is never around anymore. This should be fascinating." Forrest sank into the chair across from me, and I watched my husband, my partner of 12 years, the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, prepared to explain why he'd killed me off 6 months before I actually knew I was dead. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny voice whispered, "This is just the beginning." Forrest took a breath so deep I thought he might hyperventilate. "It started 6 months ago. I was lonely." "Lonely." I repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. "You were lonely. So, naturally, the solution was to kill me off and join a grief support group. You're always at the clinic," he said, and there was this whine in his voice that made my teeth hurt. "You work 60, 70 hours a week. We never talk anymore. We never do anything together. So let me get this straight." I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Instead of, I don't know, suggesting couples therapy or planning a date night, or using your actual words to tell me you were feeling neglected, you decided to fake my death and find comfort with actual grieving people? When you say it like that? How else should I say it, Forrest?" My voice was rising now, all that careful control starting to crack. "You've been lying to vulnerable people, people who are actually suffering real loss. You've been using their pain as your personal therapy session." "It's not like that." He ran his hands through his hair, making it stand up in greasy spikes. He looked like a desperate used car salesman whose lot just got repossessed. "The group, they understood me. They listened. Sylvie especially. She gets what it's like to feel invisible." And there it was. Sylvie, the widow, of course. "Tell me about Sylvie." I kept my voice level, clinical, like I was taking a patient history. "How does she understand you? She's been through so much." His eyes actually got misty. This man was tearing up over another woman's dead husband while his very alive wife sat across from him. Her husband died in a motorcycle accident on Highway 40. They'd only been married 5 years. She's been struggling to figure out who she is without him. "Tragic," I said flatly. "And how exactly did you explain your relationship with me? Your dead wife? Did I get a dramatic death scene, or did you just go with, 'She went to sleep and never woke up'?" He flinched. "Cancer." I said you had cancer. "Cancer?" I nodded slowly. What kind? Does it matter? Humor me. What kind of cancer killed me in your little narrative? Pancreatic. He wouldn't look at me. You fought for 8 months, but it was too aggressive. The specificity was somehow worse than the lie itself. He'd thought about this, planned it, probably Googled survival rates and symptoms. 8 months, I said. So by your timeline, I was diagnosed right around March? When I got that promotion to senior veterinarian and started managing the emergency rotation? His silence was answer enough. Wow. I actually laughed, sharp and bitter. So when I was working extra hours because I finally got the position I'd been busting my tail for since vet school, you decided that was your cue to write me out of the show. Very efficient. I didn't plan it. He looked up then, desperate. It just happened. The first time I went, I was just curious. I saw a flyer at the coffee shop. I thought maybe I could understand what patients' families go through when they lose someone. For work. For the employee assistance program. Right, because HR departments definitely need their staff to go deep undercover in grief support groups. The sarcasm was flowing now, acidic and unstoppable. Very normal professional development. But then I started talking to people and they were so kind, so accepting. And when someone asked about my situation, I said my wife had passed. And suddenly everyone was giving me attention, asking how I was doing, checking in on me. So you were catfishing grief. I stood up, needed to move, paced to the window. Our neighborhood looked so normal. The Hendersons' porch light was on. Someone was walking their dog past the mailboxes. Meanwhile, inside our home, I was discovering my husband had committed identity fraud against my own existence. That's what this is. Emotional catfishing. I was going to tell you. I spun around. When? At my funeral? Surprise, honey. You're not actually dead, but I've been telling everyone you are for half a year. Hope you're not mad. I know how it sounds. Do you? I walked back to the table, picked up one of the photos. The one from 3 weeks ago. Because it sounds like you've been playing widower while I've been playing veterinarian. Completely unaware that I'm supposed to be 6 feet under. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did it go, Forrest? The question hung heavy between us. These Thursday night meetings, the $200 you withdraw every week. What's that for? Flowers for my fictional grave? It's for the group potlucks. He said it so quietly I almost didn't hear. And sometimes Sylvie and I would get coffee after, just to talk. She's been helping me process my feelings. Your feelings about your dead wife, who is actually alive and doing emergency surgery on golden retrievers with intestinal blockages. I set the photo down carefully, precisely. Does Sylvie know I'm not dead? No. Does anyone in this group know I'm not dead? No. So you've built an entire social circle based on a lie. I counted on my fingers. You've been emotionally supporting a real widow while pretending to be a widower. You've been accepting sympathy and support meant for people experiencing actual grief. You've been spending money, our money, on potlucks to celebrate your fake dead wife. And you've been getting coffee with a vulnerable woman who thinks you understand her pain. When I laid it out like that, even Forrest seemed to realize how spectacularly messed up it was. I'll stop going, he said quickly. I'll tell them I'm moving. That I need to process things on my own. They never have to know. Oh, they're going to know. I picked up my phone. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail. Every person in that group. Every lie you told about how I died. About our marriage. About your tragic widower status. Why? Because, Forrest, you don't get to just fade into the sunset on this one. I opened my notes app, created a new document titled simply, The Resurrection. You made me dead. Now you get to explain to everyone how I came back to life. His face went white again. You can't. You wouldn't. Try me. I smiled, and it wasn't nice. I've spent 12 years being the supportive wife while you coasted in a job you hate, complaining about how hard your life is while I'm literally elbow deep in dog intestines trying to save lives. You know what I've learned from all those years of veterinary medicine? He shook his head mutely. Sometimes the infection is so deep, the only way to save the patient is to cut away all the dead tissue. Even if it hurts. Even if it leaves a scar. I leaned across the table, close enough to see the sweat beading on his upper lip. Consider this the beginning of your debridement, honey. I straightened up, grabbed my wine glass with the warm, undrinkable Pinot Grigio, and headed toward the kitchen. Where are you going? His voice cracked on the question. To get a fresh glass of wine. I paused in the doorway. Because you're going to start talking, and I'm going to need something stronger than disappointment to get through this conversation. And Forrest? I want names, dates, and every single detail of how you murdered me. Because before this is over, everyone's going to know exactly what kind of man you really are. Behind me, I heard him start to cry. Actual tears. For himself, of course. Not for me. Never for me. Funny how some people only grieve when they're the ones losing something. It took 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio and 2 hours, but Forrest finally gave me everything. The group met every Thursday at 7 p.m. in Sylvie's apartment. There were 8 regular members, though attendance fluctuated. Besides Sylvie, there was Margaret, 64, whose husband died of a heart attack 2 years ago. Richard, 58, who lost his wife to breast cancer. Linda, 52, car accident widow. Tom, 61, whose partner died from complications of diabetes. And 3 others who came sporadically. Forrest had been attending for 26 weeks, 26 Thursdays of pretending his wife was dead, while his actual wife was saving animals and wondering why their marriage felt so empty. He showed me his phone. The private Facebook group called Moving Forward Together, Asheville. I scrolled through his posts with a kind of morbid fascination, like watching a nature documentary about a parasitic species. April 3rd. Today marks 2 months since I lost Opal. Some days the grief feels manageable. Other days it hits me like a truck. Thank you all for being my safe space. I'd been at a veterinary conference in Charlotte that day. Gave a presentation on innovative surgical techniques for hip dysplasia. Won a professional recognition award. May 15th. Opal would have loved this spring weather. She always said May was her favorite month, missing her extra hard today. May is actually my least favorite month. Allergies. I'm miserable every May. He didn't even know that. June 22nd. Having coffee with Sylvie after group tonight. It helps to talk to someone who really understands. June 22nd was our anniversary. Our 11-year anniversary. I'd worked a double shift because we had 3 emergency surgeries back to back. He'd texted me saying he understood, that we'd celebrate that weekend. We never did. You've been building a whole life around my death, I said, setting his phone down before I threw it against the wall. A whole identity. The tragic widower. The sensitive man who's learning to love again. I know it's wrong. Wrong doesn't even begin to cover it, Forrest. I pulled out my own phone, opened my email app. But here's what you don't know. That anonymous email I got? It didn't just have photos. His face, which had started to regain some color, went pale again. There was a note, very brief. It said, "He's done this before. Call me." I showed him the screen. There was a phone number. I called it this afternoon while you were at work, before you got home to find your art installation. Who? His voice was barely a whisper. Who did you talk to? Her name is Joelle. Joelle Whitmore. Ring any bells? The way he flinched told me everything. Joelle lived in Charleston. 3 years ago, before we moved to Asheville for my job opportunity. I stood up, started pacing again. The movement helped me think, helped me process. You remember Charleston, right? Where you said you were so unhappy because you hadn't found your professional groove yet? Opal, I can explain. Joelle's brother died in a fishing accident. She joined a grief support group at her church. And wouldn't you know it, she met this lovely man named Forrest who'd recently lost his wife. To leukemia that time. You really should keep your fictional diagnoses consistent. It's easier to track. I watched him crumble, piece by piece, like a sandcastle at high tide. Joelle thought she'd found someone who understood her pain. You two got close. Very close. You borrowed $3,000 from her for legal fees related to your wife's estate. Except your wife wasn't dead. She was working at Charleston Veterinary Specialists and wondering why her husband was so distant. How did she find you? He asked. And I almost admired the audacity. He wasn't even denying it. LinkedIn, Forrest. Professional networking. She'd been trying to track you down for 3 years after you ghosted her and moved to Asheville. Imagine her surprise when she searched your name and found out your dead wife was not only alive but had a thriving career and a very public professional profile. I smiled without humor. She's been watching your social media, saw you tagged in a location here in Asheville, started asking around in local groups. Someone mentioned seeing you at Sylvie's building. I was going to pay her back. With what money? The $200 a week you're spending on sympathy potlucks? I sat back down, crossed my legs, channeled every ounce of composure I had. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow is Friday. You're going to call in sick to work. You're going to spend the day writing a very detailed confession. Every lie you told, every person you deceived, every dollar you took. You can't make me. I absolutely can. Because Joelle? She's not your only problem. I pulled up another email on my phone. While you were ugly crying in our dining room, I was doing research. I found the Facebook group. I sent a private message to Sylvie. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might actually faint. I told her I was a family friend of Opal Mercer. I said I'd recently discovered some concerning information and wanted to speak with her privately. She wrote back within 10 minutes. I showed him the screen. We're meeting tomorrow, for lunch, at Tupelo Honey on College Street. You can't. He stood up abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. You'll ruin everything. Everything is already ruined, Forrest. You ruined it 6 months ago. Actually, you ruined it 3 years ago in Charleston. I'm just the demolition crew coming in to clear the rubble. Please. And now he was begging, actual tears streaming down his face. Please, Opal. I'll do anything. I'll quit the group. I'll go to therapy. Real therapy. We can work on our marriage. Our marriage? I laughed, sharp and cold. Forrest, you killed me. In your mind, in your stories, in your little support group fantasy world. You murdered me so you could get attention and sympathy and whatever emotional validation you couldn't be bothered to work for in our actual relationship. There is no marriage to work on. There's just a death certificate you never filed and a resurrection you never planned for. I stood up, grabbed my purse from the counter. I'm going to Beatrix's house tonight. You're going to stay here and think very carefully about what you've done. And tomorrow, you're going to help me fix this. All of it. Where are you going? Panic edged his voice. To talk to my best friend. To tell her that her instinct 6 months ago was right. That something was off with you. To start planning how we're going to handle this nightmare you've created. I headed for the door, paused with my hand on the knob. Oh, and Forrest, pack a bag. Because whether or not you cooperate, you're not living in this house much longer. You're kicking me out? No. I turned back, gave him the coldest smile I could manage. I'm evicting a ghost. Because according to you, I'm the only one who actually lives here. You died 6 months ago, remember? When you decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for. I walked out into the November night, leaving my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, alone with his lies. Beatrix lived 15 minutes away in a condo near downtown. I called her on the drive over, hands shaking so badly I almost pulled over twice. Opal? It's almost midnight, what's... He told people I was dead. The words tumbled out, raw and jagged. He's been going to a grief support group. For 6 months. Pretending I died of cancer. Silence. Then, I'm putting on coffee. Drive safe. And Opal? Bring everything. Every shred of evidence. Because we're going to burn his entire world down. I hung up, smiled grimly at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Forrest thought he was the only one who could play pretend. But he'd forgotten something crucial. I'm a veterinarian. I've spent years learning exactly where to cut to remove the infection without killing the patient. Time to see if the same principles applied to removing a toxic husband from a dying marriage. Spoiler alert. They did. Beatrix and I stayed up until 3 a.m. Her dining table covered in printed Facebook posts, bank statements, and a timeline we'd constructed on poster board like we were solving a murder, which, in a way, we were. My murder. The fictional one. This is diabolical, Beatrix said, pouring us both more coffee even though we absolutely didn't need it. Like, this is sociopath-level manipulation. And he did it twice. I circled Charleston on our timeline. That we know of. Who's to say there wasn't a grief group in whatever city he lived in before Charleston? Beatrix pulled out her laptop. What city did he live in before you met him? Savannah. He worked for a hotel chain there. I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard. Why? Because if he's a serial grief faker, there's going to be a pattern. She pulled up a Facebook search, started typing. Support groups usually have social media presence now. If we can find groups in Savannah from 5-6 years ago, 15 minutes later, we found it. A post in a Savannah grief support community from 6 years ago. A woman named Thea asking if anyone had information about a man named Forrest who'd attended meetings in 2019, claimed his wife died in a hiking accident, borrowed money, and disappeared. 3 cities, 3 dead wives, 3 different stories. I felt physically sick. I married a con artist who specializes in traumatized people. You married a predator, Beatrix corrected. And now we're going to make sure everyone knows it. By the time I met Sylvie at Tupelo Honey the next afternoon, I had a folder 2 inches thick and a plan that would have made a prosecutor proud. Sylvie was smaller than I'd imagined. Delicate features, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of genuine grief. She looked fragile, like a strong wind might break her. I hated Forrest even more for targeting her. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I know this must seem strange. You said you had information about Opal." Her voice was soft, southern, careful. "Are you family?" In a manner of speaking. I set the folder on the table between us. "My name is Opal, Opal Mercer, and I'm very much alive." The color drained from her face. Her coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down with shaking hands. I don't understand. Forrest has been lying to you, to everyone in your support group." I opened the folder, pulled out my driver's license, my veterinary license, a copy of my marriage certificate. "He's my husband. We've been married for 12 years. I never had cancer. I never died. He invented my death so he could infiltrate your group and manipulate vulnerable people." Sylvie stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. No, that's not. Forrest wouldn't. He would. He did." I pulled out the printed Facebook posts, laid them in front of her one by one. April through November. 26 weeks of lies. And Sylvie, you're not the first. I told her about Charleston, about Joelle and the $3,000, about Savannah and Thea. I watched her face cycle through disbelief, denial, and finally, devastating understanding. "He said I was special," she whispered. "He said he felt a connection because we both understood loss. He's a parasite." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "He finds people in pain and feeds on their trauma. He did it to you, to Joelle, to Thea, and he did it to me, his actual wife, by erasing my existence so he could play the victim." Sylvie's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. The rest of the group, Margaret, Richard, Linda, they all think they've been supporting a genuine widower. They've opened their hearts and their wallets and their trust to a con artist. I pulled out the final document. "This is a statement I've prepared. It outlines everything. I'm planning to attend Thursday's meeting to tell everyone the truth." "You can't." Sylvie looked up, eyes wide with panic. "It'll destroy the group. These people, they're fragile. Margaret just started coming out of her depression. Tom finally stopped having panic attacks. If they find out they've been manipulated like this, they deserve to know the truth," I said quietly. "And they deserve to know so they can protect themselves. Because men like Forrest, they don't stop. They just find new hunting grounds." Sylvie was quiet for a long moment, staring at the papers spread across our table like evidence at a crime scene. "What do you need from me?" she finally asked. "I need you to let me come to Thursday's meeting. I need you to support me when I tell them. And I need you to file a report with the police about the money he borrowed from you." Her head snapped up. "He didn't borrow money from me." "Not yet." I pulled out printed messages from the Charleston case. "But look at the pattern. He builds trust for months. He creates emotional intimacy. And then, once he has you hooked, comes the financial ask. It's always framed as temporary. always an emergency. Always something that plays on sympathy. Sylvie's face hardened. He asked me 2 weeks ago if I knew any good divorce lawyers. Said he was helping a friend at work whose wife was trying to take everything in the split. Wanted to know if I could recommend someone affordable. Let me guess. He mentioned money was tight because of medical bills from my fictional cancer treatment. He said the debt was crushing him. There is no debt. I pulled out our joint bank statements. Our finances are fine. Better than fine. I make good money. We have savings. He's not drowning in medical bills because there were no medical bills because I never had cancer because I'm not dead. I watched her process it. Saw the moment true anger replaced shock. That son of a... She stopped herself, pressed her lips together. I'm sorry. I don't usually curse, but feel free. I smiled grimly. I've been cursing steadily since Thursday night. She pulled out her phone. I'm texting Margaret, and Richard, and Linda. Everyone needs to know before Thursday. We need to be prepared. There's one more thing. I pulled out the final page. I contacted a reporter at the Asheville Citizen-Times. They're interested in running a story about predators in grief support groups. They want to interview victims. It's a chance to warn other groups, other vulnerable people. Sylvie looked up, something fierce flickering in her eyes. When? Next week. After we confront him on Thursday. After everyone knows what he is. I'm in. She straightened her shoulders, and I saw a glimpse of who she'd been before grief broke her. And I'm calling Joelle. She deserves to be part of this too. We spent the next hour coordinating. Sylvie called Margaret, who called Richard, who called Linda. By 5 p.m., every member of the group knew the truth. By 6 p.m., we had a plan. Thursday's meeting would proceed normally. Forrest would arrive expecting his usual sympathy and attention. And then I would walk in. Very much alive. Very much furious. Very much ready to watch his carefully constructed fantasy world implode. Sylvie walked me to my car. I almost fell for him, you know. I thought maybe I could love again. That maybe we could build something from our shared pain. He counts on that, I said. He counts on people being too kind, too trusting, too damaged to see the manipulation. Not anymore. She hugged me, surprising us both. Thank you for finding me, for stopping this before he could do more damage. Thank you for believing me. I hugged her back, and for being brave enough to fight back. I drove home as the sun set over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Forrest's truck wasn't in the driveway. Good. I'd told him to stay with his brother. His actual brother this time. The one he'd lied about visiting. Inside, the house felt different. Lighter somehow, despite everything. Maybe because I wasn't carrying the weight of a failing marriage anymore. I was carrying the weight of justified rage, which somehow felt cleaner. My phone buzzed. A text from Beatrix. Joelle is flying in Wednesday. She wants to be there Thursday. Also, the reporter wants to meet with you tomorrow. And Opal? I'm so proud of you. I smiled, poured myself a glass of wine, a good one this time, not the cooking wine I'd been stress drinking, and sat on my back porch watching the sunset. Somewhere out there, Forrest was panicking, realizing his lies were unraveling faster than he could spin new ones, wondering how badly this would end for him. I raised my glass to the sunset, not nearly as badly as he deserved, but we were getting there. Thursday arrived like a reckoning dressed in autumn leaves and cool mountain air. I dressed carefully that morning. Professional but approachable. Navy blazer, white blouse, dark jeans. The kind of outfit that said, I'm a competent adult who absolutely did not die of pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. I even wore the necklace Forrest gave me for our 10th anniversary. A little twist of the knife, if you will. Joelle arrived at my house at 5 p.m. She was taller than I'd imagined, with sharp eyes and a firmer handshake than Forrest probably remembered. We didn't need many words. We understood each other perfectly. Two women who'd been erased by the same man for completely different reasons. Ready to resurrect? She asked with a grim smile. Been ready since Thursday. I grabbed my folder of evidence. Let's go haunt a grief group. Sylvie's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a renovated building downtown, the kind with exposed brick and too expensive rent. When we arrived at 6:45 p.m., the group was already gathering. Through the window, I could see Forrest sitting on the couch, coffee cup in hand, playing the part he'd perfected over 26 weeks. Margaret answered Sylvie's door, her eyes kind and knowing. "You must be Opal. Come in, dear. We've been waiting." The living room fell silent as Joelle and I walked in. Forrest's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a crash that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Brown liquid spread across the floor like a crime scene chalk outline. "Hello, Forrest." I kept my voice steady, pleasant even. "Surprised to see me? I know I'm supposed to be dead, but I had this funny thing happen where I kept on living." His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "Opal, I can explain." "Oh, I think we're past explanations." I turned to the group, saw their faces ranging from confusion to dawning horror. "My name is Opal Mercer. I'm a veterinarian here in Asheville. I've been married to Forrest for 12 years, and I've never had cancer, never been sick, and definitely never died. But apparently in this room, I've been dead for 6 months." Richard stood up, his face reddening. "This is some kind of sick joke." "It's not a joke. It's a con." Joelle stepped forward. "My name is Joelle Whitmore. 3 years ago in Charleston, Forrest told me his wife died of leukemia. He borrowed $3,000 from me for legal fees and then disappeared when his job transferred him to Asheville. I've been looking for him ever since." Margaret sank into her chair. "Oh, my Lord. There's also Thea in Savannah," I continued, opening my folder. "Hiking accident 6 years ago. Same pattern. Build trust, create intimacy, borrow money, vanish. He's been doing this for years, targeting grief support groups because he knows the people there are vulnerable and trusting and desperate for connection." Tom's voice shook with rage. "We opened our hearts to you. We shared our darkest pain with you." "I know," Forrest whispered. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it." Sylvie stood up, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. "You made us believe you understood our suffering. You let us comfort you. You took our energy, our time, our trust, resources we barely had, and you used them to feed your ego. It wasn't like that," he tried. "It was exactly like that." I pulled out the printed Facebook posts, let them flutter to the coffee table like accusations. 26 weeks of performed grief, of calculated manipulation. You didn't just lie to these people, Forrest. You weaponized their trauma against them. Linda was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "I told you about my husband's last words. I told you things I've never told anyone. And you were just, what? Playing pretend?" "I was lonely," he said desperately. "My marriage was falling apart. Our marriage was fine until you decided it wasn't." I felt my composure crack slightly, let the real anger show. I was working hard, building my career, trying to make a life for us. And instead of talking to me, instead of fighting for what we had, you killed me off and went shopping for sympathy from people who'd actually lost something. The room was silent except for Linda's quiet crying and the sound of Forrest's ragged breathing. Margaret stood up slowly, walked over to him. For a moment, I thought she might comfort him. Old habits die hard in caregivers. Instead, she looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Get out. Get out of this apartment and out of our lives. You don't belong in a space meant for healing. You're the wound." Forrest looked around the room, desperate for an ally. Found none. Even the universe was done with his performance. He left without another word, shoulders hunched, face red with shame. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that felt like an ending. Sylvie locked it. Good riddance to ghosts who were never real. The Asheville Citizen-Times ran the story the following Tuesday. Local man posed as widower in multiple support groups across 3 cities. It went viral by Wednesday. By Friday, 2 more women had come forward. One from Atlanta, one from Richmond. 5 cities, 5 fake dead wives. A decade of deception. Forrest lost his job. The HR director said they couldn't have someone with compromised ethical judgment managing employee relations. The irony was not lost on anyone. I filed for divorce. He didn't contest it. Probably because 3 of his victims, including me, were consulting with lawyers about potential fraud charges. He signed everything I put in front of him, took his clothes and his shame, and moved to God knows where to presumably reinvent himself again. The support group continued meeting, stronger and more vigilant. They created a screening process, started checking references, built a network with other groups to watch for predators. Sylvie became a speaker at grief counselor conferences, teaching professionals how to spot manipulation. Joelle got her $3,000 back. I made sure of it, took it out of the settlement. As for me, I'm still in Asheville, still saving animals, still working too many hours. But now I come home to a house that's actually mine, to silence that feels peaceful instead of loaded. I adopted a 3-legged rescue dog named Lazarus because I appreciate a good resurrection story. Beatrix says I should write a book. From Death to Divorce, How I Survived My Own Obituary. I told her maybe, someday, when it's funny instead of infuriating. But here's what I learned from being killed off and coming back to life. Some people will erase you to make themselves the main character. They'll rewrite your story to suit their narrative, turn your existence into a plot device for their emotional drama. The trick is remembering you're the author of your own life. And if someone writes you out, you write yourself back in. Bigger, louder, more alive than they ever imagined. After all, you can't keep a good woman dead, especially when she never died in the first place. Turns out, the best revenge isn't living well. It's living. Period. Visibly. Undeniably. With absolutely zero permission from the people who tried to bury you. And if that haunts them, well, some ghosts are meant to rattle chains.